6 strategies outlined in the district's strategic plan to ensure that our work is aligned to our mission and our core values. My report will be posted to the district website after it is delivered at that meeting. As we continue to prepare the preliminary budget for the 22-23 school year, the administrative team and I review all aspects of the district, such as enrollment, staffing, supplies, materials, programs, and the fiscal and operational needs of the district. At this point in the year, we are predicting a fairly stable enrollment for next school year. I will share more detail with regard to the enrollment report at our next meeting. I had the opportunity to attend this month's Verona Municipal Alliance Committee meeting. It was great to learn about VMAC and the work that the organization is doing to support our schools. I want to thank VMAC for inviting me to attend and look forward to our continued partnership. Finally, the district is well aware that the governor released a bit of information that intimated that there is a possibility that the mandatory mask mandate could possibly, I'm using very fluid terms here, could possibly be lifted by the end of this academic year under certain circumstances if case rate drops significantly. So with all of those qualifiers attached to that statement, we are aware of it, we're keeping our eye on it, and we will certainly prepare more information for our district community once we know more details. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fernari. And does anybody have any questions or comments for Dr. Fernari from the board?
Yeah, I just have one question because you spoke of enrollment and it reminded me just now. So I saw that in this past year, we're down 65 total kids in the district. So maybe George, because you've been here a little longer, might know, is that something that's a typical number of students that would leave our district and go somewhere else in a year? Or do we think that number is high because perhaps COVID and kids go into private schools or something like that?
So I think that most districts in New Jersey have seen a very fluctuating enrollment due to the situation with the health emergency. However, we have to also keep in mind that each year the enrollment shifts based on the number of your exiting oldest class. So for us, it's our 12th grade class and our incoming kindergarten class, or pre-K. Kindergarten really is the starting point for us with large numbers. So when we use that as a lens, we see that every single year, the cohort of students who are school eligible varies. So that's one thing we have to keep our eye on. When we talk about that in demographic terms, we talk about live birth rate 5 years before students are school age. We also look at what's happening in the community. We know that in the next several years, there is possibility of an enrollment fluctuation based on the fact that there is some new housing that's going to be constructed in town. So these are all things that help us to make that determination. So I think, Mr. Waka, that to answer your question, I do think there is some COVID issue going on there, but we're going to see some interesting numbers change as we hopefully move out of that and as we see what these new housing
Okay, so
developments
that number
add.
doesn't necessarily mean we lost 65 kids that were here. It means that the cohort size may have gone smaller.
Could very
and
well
that
been
could factor
smaller.
into. Very good.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Fernari? So if not, we are going to continue with our agenda and we're going to move on to the business administrator report, and that'll be Mr. Cruz or the great Oz.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I have a few updates for the business administrator report. First, I would like to provide an update on finance. In tonight's meeting, we have the November and December board secretary report along with their respective treasurers and budget transfer report. And I'm happy to report that they're all in agreement. The months of December and January were quite busy for the district office. I'd like to take this time to thank each member of the business team, our central office staff, and our IT manager for all the hard work and dedication. In the midst of transitioning to a new financial system, which is now live, at this time, we're also in the process of preparing our 22-23 preliminary budget, which we look forward to presenting to the board on February 22nd. As Dr. Fernari previously stated, we're happy to report as well that our auditors, Nisavacha, completed our 2020-21 audit last month. And tonight we have Mr. Ray Saranelli Jr., who will be presenting that report. Thank you very much. That's all I have for today.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Does anybody on the board, Mrs. Drappi has a question?
Yes, Mr. Cruz. I think it was maybe last meeting or it may have been the last December meeting. I can't remember, where we had talked about the possibility of doing a finance 101 or having you do a finance 101 for the board. And we had discussed that possibly at one of the February meetings. So I just wanted to keep that on the radar and, put that out there so we can make sure that that happens. Thank you.
Yes. Mrs. Drappi, I didn't forget about that. It was brought up at the Finance Committee, and I apologize for omitting that in today's report. But on the Finance meeting, I did mention that I'll have that for you guys on the February 8th meeting. So February 8th, we'll do a Budget 101 for the board and the public. And then the following board meeting will be the preliminary budget.
You ruined my report, Mrs. Drappi.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. And if there's no other questions or comments in regard to Mr. Cruz's business administrator report, we're going to move on to Mr. Saranelli with the presentation of our 2020, 2021 audit. Thank you, Mr. Saranelli.
So good evening, everybody. It sounds like from the what you're talking about, you're going to get a lot of finance over your next several meetings. You'll get a good dose of what goes into the budget tonight because we're going to go over your fund balance and your excess surplus, which all plays into how the budget is put together. So you'll get a little bit tonight. Sounds like you'll get some 101 and then go right into the budget process. So we will be talking about the 2021 district budget, district audit tonight. I want to start by discussing our process a little bit, then talk about the audit itself, go over your financial position, and then lastly, we'll go over the statutory findings and recommendations. So for us, the process, we're on site usually for roughly 2 weeks. We like to, obviously, you close out June 30th, that's the end of your fiscal year. Given the turnover in the board office, we like to give you a pretty significant amount of time to make sure the records are closed out. Everything looks like it's in good order before we get in. Then we come in, 2 weeks, we're on site doing audit testing. We begin to compile the financial statements. Once we're done with the testing, go back to our office, prepare all the financial statements and have an audit put together for you. So obviously that's operating in the environment that we're operating in, that presents some logistical issues, right? We have to be here. We have to have our staff here, socially distanced and everything like that. So I just want to thank your board office. Everybody's very accommodating when we're here, very helpful. We ask for a lot. An audit is an invasive process. And everybody is very accommodating when we're here. So we appreciate that and their flexibility. So looking at the audit, you have a pretty thick book in front of you. Over the last 10 or 15 years, the audit has become very complex. The accounting industry has passed a lot of standards requiring a lot of high-level disclosures in the name of transparency, which is great. We want to be as transparent as possible. Sometimes they get a little too technical, right? With some of the pension information and other post-employment benefit information that goes into the report doesn't really affect the day-to-day operations of a district. And so what you end up with is an audit report that has financial schedules provided in 3 different bases of accounting. So you have A schedules, which are on a district-wide basis. You have B schedules, which are on a GAAP basis or generally accepted accounting principle basis. And then you have C schedules, which are on a budgetary basis. And so what I tried to do was, in front of you is our C1 schedule, which is the budgetary basis. It's the most accurate picture of your operations day to day. It's also what you affect, right? You make decisions on the budget, what revenues there are, what areas of expense there are. So that's what I try and present to you because that's what you can affect. And that's how things happened during the year and how the year closed out. So if you look at the C1 schedule that I have in front of you there, you'll notice it's basically an income statement. So the first page you have in front of you is all of your revenues. And then you have roughly 11 pages of expenditures broken down into different categories, such as, general, regular instruction, all the way transportation, special education instruction, all the different areas of expense. And at the very last page, Exhibit C1, page 12 of 12, you'll come down to the district's ending fund balance. So just like a company, revenues less expenses is retained to earnings. In a school district, that ends up being fund balance. And so what you'll notice is your fund balance started the year at $2,830,790 and ended the year at $4,147,203. And so the column I'm looking at is second in from the right, and that is what actually happened during the year. The columns to the left are the budgeted balances. And so what you'll see there is a pretty significant increase in your fund balance of a little bit over $1.3 million. That's probably the largest your fund balance has ever gone up in 1 year. And that is not a Verona specific issue that we're seeing across all the audits that we do for all the districts, roughly 80 in total. I would say everybody's fund balance went up anywhere from $500,000 to $3 million during 2021. Primarily, that is the result of having a balanced budget that was underrun. Basically, your expenditures came in much less than what you budgeted because in the fiscal year 2020, 2021, the district didn't operate fully, right? We had a health emergency. So what you budgeted for expenses didn't necessarily come in. So there's a significant savings there, which results in a boost in fund balance. There are some other expenses that do come up, right? Where we are in a health emergency, there's expenses that are coming up. So you would think maybe that might balance it out. But what do we have? We have a lot of federal funding coming in to help support those initiatives to make sure we're meeting the new criteria of having school in session during a health crisis. So kind of a twofold thing there. You're experiencing savings because school is not operating normally. Any additional expenses are being covered by the federal government. So what you end up with is a pretty drastic increase in your fund balance. That's financially a good thing. I don't think anybody would want a pandemic to improve the financials of their district, but financially, you're in a very good spot. So what's a little bit different from the schedules that are in the book is that I provided the 2018 numbers, the 2019 numbers, and the 2020 numbers compared to the 2021 numbers. So statutorily, your fund balance can be broken down into a number of different areas. And so what I like to try and do is go through the simplest areas, and then we'll work up to the excess surplus, which is a little bit more complicated. It flows into your budget. So your capital reserve at the end of 2021 was $1,089,724. In looking back, that's historically very high for you. And I think that's a good thing, right? We hear that there might be some enrollment fluctuations moving forward. We just went through a big referendum. So you want to be able to be prepared so that you can continue to invest in your capital assets. You go through the referendum, you don't want to see things fall back apart, have to do another referendum. You want to try and maintain the upkeep of your assets. And that's what the capital reserve will help you do. Moving forward, you can withdraw from that for any capital type purchases that you need to make. Similarly, there's a maintenance reserve, very similar to the capital reserve, but used more for maintenance type items, not larger purchases like capital type items. Then underneath that, you'll see unemployment compensation, and you'll notice there was never any reserve for unemployment compensation in a prior year. That's a new standard that was created for the 2021 audit, where your unemployment compensation needed to be brought into your general operations. So obviously not a very big number, but now a part of your general operations. That brings us to the unassigned fund balance. And what you'll see in the unassigned fund balance, last year you had 987,000, and this year you have 1,791,870. So a huge increase in your unassigned fund balance. And that's because the state enacted a new statute where instead of being able to hold 4% of your expenditures in unassigned fund balance, I'm sorry, instead of being able to hold 2% of your unassigned fund balance, of your expenditures in unassigned fund balance, you can now hold 4%. So a big increase in your unassigned fund balance because the state is now allowing you to hold 4% of your expenditures in unassigned fund balance as opposed to 2%. That was enacted primarily because of what I spoke about before. Every single district across the state is experiencing increases in fund balance. The state wanted to give you some more flexibility as far as keeping unassigned fund balance. So they moved the percentage you could hold from 2% up to 4%. So the last thing that will come down to is the excess surplus. And what excess surplus is a drawdown of your fund balance through the budget process. So essentially, once you have all those other reserves established, the state says you can't have any more fund balance and it needs to be returned back into the budget. And that happens on a subsequent year basis, right? So you're preparing the 22-23 budget now, but don't know what fund balance is going to be at the end of 2022. So what you do for the 2022-23 school year is use the fund balance generated in 2021, in which case that's 912,938. In this year that we're in right now, the 21-22 school year, you used 89,406 of your own fund balance to balance the budget. And essentially that's what's happening with excess surplus, right? In a government, the budget has to be balanced. The revenues have to equal expenditures. In this case, your revenues don't equal your expenditures by 89,406 because you're using your own money to fund your expenditures through the year. Next year, your revenues will not equal your expenses by 912,938 because you're using your own fund balance, a drawdown of your own fund balance to balance the budget. And what this does, it gives you a little bit more flexibility as you prepare the budget. So there's not a lot of school districts can do to generate new revenues, right? There's tuition, there's state aid, and there's taxes. And so by having a decent sized excess surplus, it gives you a little bit of flexibility each year that you don't have to be so reliant on taxes. As your expenses go up, you don't have to rely solely on taxes. You have this excess surplus. And so what I always recommend is we want to try and see consistency in the excess surplus. So you'll see, obviously, there's a pretty big difference in the excess surplus over the years up to 2021. And I think in working with the business office, we felt a district this size really should have more excess surplus, should have more flexibility because there are so many expenses that can fluctuate throughout the years. We wanted to have more flexibility as each budget is prepared. So moving forward, I would think you're going to continually try and generate somewhere around $900,000 to $1 million of excess surplus, which each year will get turned into the budget and hopefully give you a little bit more flexibility as you prepare the budget. So that's a lot of very complicated information on school district finance and budgeting. Do you have any questions?
Can I ask one question? So, and correct me if I'm wrong with any of this, but my understanding is that if we're going to add capital money into a capital projects fund, we have to have the long-term planning, the long-term planning to indicate what the project's going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
You brought up with the expected enrollment in a couple of years may very well increase by 150 kids. Is there a way to earmark that into our long-term projects planning, even though we don't know right now what type of projects, capital projects we would need because of this increased enrollment, if that makes sense?
It does. And so I guess the short answer would be no, because you don't know what those long range projects are. As you move through those projects and planning for those projects, you can make adjustments to the capital reserve to try and plan for them as you go through them. But if you don't really know about them right now, it's hard to say that, well, we're going to start saving for them anyway.
So
So
my next, that's a very good answer. Thank you. I didn't know that. So the next question is, just because we put something on a cap in our long-term facilities planning, are we obligated to go through with that project? In other words, could we put the most likely 3 or 4 scenarios that may occur with this 150 kids as a project that we list on our long-term facilities plans, but then we never actually move forward with it, and we move forward with the one thing that does make the most sense at that time?
so you're getting a little bit out of my area of expertise with the long range facilities plan, but I believe that it is just a plan and not a hard and fast, we have to do this. So I don't think once it's in there, you have to do it, especially because the best laid plans are great, but if you don't have the money to do them, you're not going to do them. So I would say, no, you're not obligated to do something if it's in your long range facilities plan. But as you go through, you can make adjustments to that.
Thank you for that answer.
Chris, I just want to sort of piggyback on what you're saying. And Ray, this is a question related to that. So I think outside facilities, in what you're speaking to, Chris, is influx of, a large amount of students very quickly. I think what the bulk of our finances from that come from would be hiring more teachers, right? Because our classes would be filled, they would go over the limit according to our board policy of what we think is per class. So, but that would not come from capital fund. That would come from our general budget, right? Because if we're paying salaries, that can't come from our capital funding, correct?
That's correct. And that's why and thank you for bringing it up. That was another reason that we discussed, having a higher excess surplus is that will give you more flexibility as, certain needs come up. You won't have to be so reliant on just taxes to try and deal with those situations. So yes, as things come up, and that's what was actually very good about being in such a good financial position at the end of the year. We were able to put a pretty significant amount of money into capital to deal with capital needs as they come up, but also to have a higher excess surplus, which will hopefully continue to give you flexibility as you move through the coming years.
Yeah, 'cause I think the ideal scenario, right, is if we get these 150 to 175 new kids and they're all in, this different grade levels, then we probably don't have to look to build anything new or find new spacing for them. If all of them are, if 80% of them are between grades 3 and 4, that changes the dynamic. So, I think that's the flexibility that I was thinking perhaps we might want to explore to give ourselves, but hopefully your scenarios would actually happen. That'll be the best case scenario.
So right, just for clarification, we don't know a number as far as we don't know. I know we've been saying, there's been talk about 150. No, there is no number at this point. What I think we probably will need to do around this board table is very soon discuss what we need to do as far as a demographic study. We'll work with the township and find out what the capacity for some of those building projects might be. And then it'll help us to plan for the future, whether it's long range facilities plan or, wisely budgeting that excess surplus.
And I just wanted to, I know, Ray, thank you for the presentation. I believe during the finance committee, we did talk about there were 4 findings. And if you're prepared to talk about those, just to, to flag those out and just tell the board and the public sort of some of the things that you found about and some recommendations you had for us.
Yes, yeah. So I just wanted to make sure, when I go through the finances and the complexities of it, I like to a little pause and make sure everybody's on board with me still until we get to the recommendation. So absolutely, yes, I will go through them. I just wanted to make sure there was any further discussion on finances or budgeting or excess surplus.
So I thank you for the good news, because I've been on the board for 8 years, and we've never had a maintenance reserve, capital reserve, and the numbers that we're looking at today. And so we're very happy with the fiscal planning of the board and the district, and the funding from whether state or federal too, that put us in the position we are today. But we always have to make sure we're watching every dollar and controlling that, because there's a lot of unforeseen things coming up that we need to be prepared for. So
Okay, so yes, there were 4 recommendations in the management report, which is this separately bound book here. So the first of them being, we recommend that the purchase orders are approved prior to the order of related goods and services. And this relates to internal controls. It's important to have a system of checks and balances, especially in your finance department, to make sure you're accurate, not only accurately reporting, but it can help detect fraud as well. And so this is one thing that does both, making sure that your purchase orders are approved prior to their purchase. And I don't want to say it was rampant, but we did find issues where, that was being done. The purchase orders were not approved yet, but invoices were being undertaken, things like that. So that's the reason for the recommendation. The next finding is that we recommend that a ledger by deduction be maintained for the payroll agency account. And what that is an agency account, right? Whatever goes into it should come out on a monthly basis. Now, due to timing, that's not what happens, and oftentimes a balance is left at the end of the month or at the end of the year, and there should be an accurate accounting of, okay, if there's $100,000 left in the account, 10 is for this, 50 is for this, and 60 is for this, and that was not being maintained. So that's not to say that there's money in there that's unaccounted for. It's just that the reconciliation is done properly, but there's not an analysis of balance in there. And so that's the reason for the recommendation. The third finding and recommendation that we have is that all expenditures are reviewed to ensure they are properly charged to the appropriate line item as detailed in the Uniform Minimum Chart of Accounts for New Jersey Public Schools. And what that is, there was 11 pages of expenditures broken down by account lines. And so in order to have a accurate reporting and accurate budgeting, all of your expenditures should be charged to an appropriate account. And that way next year, you know what to budget for it. And what we found was there were some issues where certain charges were not to the appropriate line item. Again, I don't want to say it was rampant. It wasn't like there was charges all over the place, but there was a few instances that we found. And so I have an obligation when we find something, it has to go into the report. So that's what that is. And then the last one is that we recommend that the proprietary funds be properly reconciled and recorded through the district accounting systems. So what you have is your food service funds are not running through your accounting software. And so it's not that they're not being reconciled. It's not that they're not being accounted for. They're just not being done properly. And so similarly, when we find something like that, we have to recommend that an adjustment be made to correct that. And so, in looking at the recommendations, there was an improvement over what we found last year, but I think, we just heard Mr. Cruz, your new system is operational. A lot of these issues were related to the prior accounting software that you had. To say it's difficult to work with is an understatement. I worked with it last year and hated it. I had our supervisor working with it this year. He didn't really like it either. It's not a very user-friendly system. And so I think, you get caught up in some of these issues when you're working with a system that's very difficult to use. And so hopefully, you have a new accounting software. You have a permanent business administrator now who's, taken a course of action to try and correct these issues and move forward with a good strategy of having a good software, having a good business office running properly. So we've been talking a few times over the past 2 months about what the direction of the business office should be, what types of procedures and controls should be in place. And so, I think you have some issues here at the end of 2021, and I'm very hopeful for how the end of 2022 turns out. So you have corrective action plans to move forward with, but I would say most likely that's already being undertaken even prior to this meeting tonight. So a few issues to work out, but I'm definitely seeing some promise from the new software and the business office. So any questions related to your findings and or recommendations?
No, but to Mr. Cruz's credit, I will say that, going through a comprehensive audit, especially so as your first year as a new district, getting flagged 3 or 4 times is, for any district, is actually a pretty good number. It's not uncommon one little bit. Maybe someone's calling to tell me that. But I think, I'm really pleased with the number is so low. And, thank you, Mr. Cruz, for kind of working on that so hard.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sarinelli, for the report. And I want to echo some of the sentiments that Mr. Day and Mr. Waka said. We've been working really hard as a district. You came to us as a new auditor. You pointed out some stuff last year. We've made some improvements. I think the new accounting software is going to be a big boon to our business office. And Mr. Cruz can chime in if he's still around here, because I know he did a lot of work getting a purchasing manual together, and he's been training his department, and that's being pushed out internally. So I think to Mr. Day's point, like our numbers look really good this year. I think congratulations to the district and our finance department for being on it. And I am hopeful too, onward and upward, and we keep getting better. So thank you very much.
This question, when's this going to be available to the public for their review? When will this be available? When will this audit be available to the public for their review? So they could see it or access it?
Immediately, right?
So, Mr. Walker, we are going to be posting the audit to the public on the next board agenda. So we are going to have it on the agenda for board acceptance, along with the corrective action plan for the 4 findings. So at that point, it will be public, and it will be posted on the website on right after the February 8th. And thank you. I also want to take the moment. Thank you, Mrs. Fernari, and also Mr. Walker for that as well. I would like to take the moment to just thank Mr. Sarinelli and his team. And it was quite an extensive process, and in the midst of transitioning and really working in the back end of preparing everything and getting this audit ready. And it was a lot, but it was always helpful to actually have Ray on the phone with all the questions, and also preparing the internal controls and the process. Like Mrs. Freshly mentioned, the purchasing manual was created a few months ago, and we trained all of our staff in the month of December. And it was a purchasing manual that was adopted by the board in early December and shared with all of Verona staff. And it's something that everyone is fully aware of, and where we've implemented it and apply it to every single procurement transaction in the district. So it's something that we don't take lightly. It's and it's there for a reason, and it's to prevent just waste and mismanagement of public funding. So it's something that I take also very seriously, and it's one of the probably one of the most critical pieces in managing on the business office is the purchasing side. So thank you for that, and I look forward to continue working with you, Mr. Sarinelli, in the next audit.
Likewise.
Thank you very much. Did anybody else have anything else? All right, you're dismissed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a safe ride home.
Thank
And we are going to continue with our agenda, and we're going into committee reports. And first, we have facilities with Mr. Day and Mrs. Drappi.
Yes, we met yesterday with Mr. Higgins, and Mr. Rocco was kind enough to fill in for Mr. Day, who was unavailable at the time. We met with Connor from Legacy to have an update on the final stages of our HVAC referendum project. FM Brown, the final pipes are being connected. Any issues that are arising in each building are being addressed at night as much as they can, so they don't disrupt any class time. Inspections on electrical and steel have been completed. Closeout docs are currently being reviewed by the architect. We are waiting on Train to complete the computer controls for the remote access. And that, I think I wrote, is finished at Forest, and then will be finished at FM Brown around President's Day, that long weekend. And then everything will be finalized and tested. The goal is for everything to be finalized and tested over spring break. Again, we really are at the mercy of everything just being available at Train. Supply issues occur everywhere in the world, and they are not immune to that. We had discussed, well, in the buildings that the AC is completed and the computers are installed and all that, why can't we just start it up? And he said, well, it doesn't make sense to do it when it's still cold out, because you won't get an accurate reading of its effectiveness. Yes. So, and then the training for our facility folks who will be conducting, who will be using the equipment and who will be, monitoring the computers and accessing the computers. That training starts very soon. And that was really all we discussed. That was the only thing that was on the agenda.
If I could add on, Sarah, I had asked, are we confident that when the weather turns and it gets hot out, that in every school, the air conditioning will be fully functional? And the answer was yes. And to me, that's huge news. It's very, very huge news. So I'm very optimistic to have heard that.
If there's no other,
Nope, that was it. Thank you, Mr. Rocca.
if there's no other questions, Mr. Day or Mrs. Prisco for facilities, we can move on. We'll do community resources, and Mrs. Prisco, do you want to do that? And then I'll fill in.
Report on some. Dr. Fenari did mention regarding the DEI Inclusive Committee. Dr. Miller and the DEI facilitators turnkeyed session number 1, training to the staff at all levels during the recent faculty meeting. And the team attended session 2 training on the Innocent Classroom on January 12th. HYA, we had our executive session on January 20th to review the applications for superintendent. Mrs. Freshy, you're going to talk about that after I finish our report. Let's see, other methods of communicating to the public, Friday folder, the Canva presentation on roles and responsibilities is up and running on our website, and the Friday folder continues to be updated. We are working on updating the district's Twitter feed. There's a community tab on the main page of the district website. Dr. Fenari also is planning to publish a midwinter newsletter, probably sometime in late February, to share news and events to the school community. Let's see what else. Dr. Fenari also met with Mrs. Pascal, the director of the Verona Public Library, on January 12th. You're getting around. Busy. Health and Wellness Series, next event to be held on January 26th. And Dr. Fenari is also, and the board and us are discussing holding a town hall type of forum this year. And we also talked about ways to better connect with our SCAs and get some information out to the SCAs in years past, there was Board of Ed liaisons that would attend the Board of Ed meetings and report back at the SCA meetings. It's been kind of difficult with, COVID. I don't really even know if SCAs are meeting regularly or what, but we just want to really try to connect back with the SCAs so everyone could be informed. And also at our February 8th meeting, Mr. Dan Roberts will be updating us on some legal updates. And then,
Thank you, Mrs. Prisco.
you're welcome.
I couldn't hear if you said, we have the community tab on our website now. Yeah, so that links to the town council and our town hall, and they're reciprocating. So they have a Verona Public Schools on their website as well. So we're going to try and, unify the two governing bodies a little bit more, have better communication, because not only do we need to reach our school community, we have to reach our entire community at large. And that includes people who don't have children in the district and everyone. So we're really working hard at being inclusive on that. And then I just wanted to update in a little bit more detail of what Mrs. Prisco touched on with HYA. HYA is the search firm that the board engaged with for our superintendent search. And our meeting on the 20th, HYA reported to us that they had 58 applications that were actually started. 42 of them were done in their entirety and submitted to us. And HYA, we have a dedicated team of 3 recruiters that vetted those 42. And what they presented to us on January 20th were their top 10 candidates. So when they presented their top 10, they did run through the other 31 or 32 candidates for us. So we did have an opportunity to evaluate the entire pool, and we were able to add to their 10 if we so chose. And then through that vetting system, the board together narrowed down that top 10 to our top 5. So we do have 5 candidates, and our next meeting is January 29th, weather permitting. So we're coming up with a plan B. But right now we're slated for January 29th. We'll begin our interviews with those top 5 candidates and then funnel that down. And we're slated for February 12th to have our second round interviews. So that's all going really, really well. I've been really impressed with HYA, their attention to detail, their process of vetting the candidates and their recommendations to us, their availability if we had questions, and clarifying all points. So far, that's been a really good experience with them. So we are moving along with that. And I think that's it. You covered everything that we
If
spoke
I
about.
could add on to what you just spoke of.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Walker.
I left the meeting the other night when we screened candidates feeling very optimistic about where we're at with this process. So, and I also agree. I thought that was, out of all the ones I've seen, this was the most professional and organized and transparent. We were able to see everyone that applied, and kind of even the ones that weren't screened for the top 10, we were still able to evaluate and see if we wanted to include them. So I just left very optimistic after leaving that meeting.
Yeah. Are there any other questions or comments in regards to community resources? Nope. Then we're gonna, did you want? Oh, you're welcome. So then we're gonna keep moving down our agenda, and we have our education committee, and that's Mrs. Drappi and Mr. Walker.
Yes, we met. It was last week, right? Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I was home today with my daughter, so like now I have no idea what day it is. We started off the meeting discussing the policy revisions Mr. Walker brought up at the last meeting, and they really were language changes just to make sure we were completely up to date. And then went down, we spoke about the RFPs for the DEI committee, which Dr. Fernari already commented on. Ms. Prisco also commented on the innocent classroom training that I know Dr. Miller and the facilitators were turnkeying to all the staff at the January faculty meeting. And that the presentation that they gave that they got from the free consortium is up, I believe is in the public folder now for tonight's meeting. We are putting the Edmonton exact path into place, which is the next step in our process in using the map growth assessments. So essentially what that allows teachers to do is it not only gives, so the teachers now have that real-time map growth data. It's almost instantaneous that they can see where the students lie and the growth that they're making or lack thereof. And then Edmonton provides model lessons as well as tangible to use instant lessons for students, whether they need to be pushed to the next level or they need to work on some gap skills. And it's just, it's a very easy tool to use once they learn how to do it. And that's what Dr. Miller was working on with the staff this month. Elementary report cards will begin their revisions. It looks like this week, next week, specifically with language arts. We spoke about the installation of a rubric on the report card because we use numbers at the elementary level, 1, 2, 3, 4. And rather than allowing that open for interpretation, we could provide a rubric not only for teachers that the teachers already use, but now the parents can use it so they can better dissect the report card that's coming home. Round 2 observations have begun for non-tenured and tenured staff. These are unannounced and then include a post-conference. Dr. Fernari and central office have started working on the civil rights data collection that is required by the U.S. Department of Education. And just so everybody knows what that is, it is a mandatory data collection authorized under the statutes and regulations implementing Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title IX of the Education Amendments of the 1972, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and under the Department of Education Organization Act. So this is completely mandatory and it's due February 28th. And then just one last thing. Oh, and just in looking at resolutions tonight, resolution 2.1 is a plethora of new hires. Of note is all of the folks who thankfully applied for substitute teaching and for lunch aides. So thank you very much to you because we are in great need of that. So that's a good sign. And then lastly, but not least, Mrs. Fresky and I attended in person and Mr. Waka was on through live stream last night. The board was invited to the CPAC meeting, which is, we were invited by the child organization as well as Dr. Moriello. So thank you very much for the invite. The meeting was wonderful last night. Lots of great discussions happening. You know, 2 takeaways we're talking about electives for students with disabilities and what does that look like going forward. Social and emotional concerns, which I think is really, you know, district-wide and it's not specific to this district. It is nationwide. And we've had those discussions as a board as well. And, you know, it was great. It was great to meet new people and see people in person. And I just thank you very much for the invite. I was glad I was able to make it. And that's it for that agenda. And then for Dr. Moriello's agenda.
Can I just butt in for one?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, in regard to some of our professional development, one of our teachers reached out to me in regard to Mr. Bill Jackson's math PD, and it was in regard to the preschool and how it was so flawless and that it was so valuable. And it was a great professional development for them. So I thought it was really nice to hear back from staff on that.
I apologize. I skipped over an entire page, which is all the professional development. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Ms. Pretsky, for reminding me. Yes, so Bill Jackson and Glenn Stevenson met on January 19th with grades 1 and 2, January 20th. grades 5, grade 4, and January 21st with VHS, algebra, geometry, and then HB grade 7 and 8. I know that teacher is not alone. We've had some great feedback about Bill Jackson and studying math through inquiry-based design. And then Dr. Miller met with led a mentoring session for our in-house mentors. New Teacher Academy is on Thursday, the 20th, or was on Thursday, the 20th. And the topic was implicit bias. And then on the 14th and on the 18th, Dana Clark and Julia Albertson met with grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, and grade 5 for curriculum building, for argument and opinion rating, for our language arts. And Dr. Jill Goebel will meet on Friday on the 28th with our world language teachers. Now I can move on.
Yeah,
Do
if
you
I
do
c-
another question?
Well, if I could add on to that report, I thought that the structure of the meeting was kind of cool and unique in that it wasn't a typical agenda. Instead, it was a bunch of year-long plans that the district has under the scope of curriculum and instruction. So you got to see where each agenda item or each topic that we talked about fits within the big picture of what we're trying to do curricularly. And it helps someone like me who's new kind of see where we've been and where we're still looking to go, which I thought was neat. So good job with that. I think Sarah will agree that each of the items that was discussed seemed reasonable and within the best interest of our students. The only thing that I had recommended for our district to consider was, I think it's reasonable to use a lot of this ESSER and the ARP money and the federal COVID money for staffing, but we got to be also careful because I know that we have a math coach, which I think is a really smart thing to bring to a district. And we're looking to pay that through for the first 3 years through this particular grant. And I think if we only do it with one staff member or two, that's reasonable, but just to be careful to keep doing this because once that money runs out, we don't want to be in a position where we have to decide, do we keep this staff member or staff members that are likely to be doing a great thing for our kid, or do we have, or do we not, based on the budget? So I think everything that they decided and the math coach is reasonable. I just caution their district not to rely too much on that particular funding for staffing.
Thank you, Mr. Waka. So just to sort of add on to the math coach, which is under resolution 2.5. And I think if we do this wisely, I think it is something sustainable. I think the way it's sort of being presented to start is a good way to do it. And a math coach could be someone, I mean, it could really be anybody. It could be someone we hire from the outside. It could also be a teacher in the long run who gets a stipend, right? But it is extraordinarily valuable for teachers who need sort of immediate support rather than having to wait for the next Bill Jackson PD, which could be, months away. So, I agree with what you're saying. I think that it should become something that is a sustainable position in our district, as well as a language arts coach. Because I think those coaching positions from a teacher standpoint, put my teacher hat on, are invaluable. So I know they can become costly. So it's something to monitor
I'm not
closely.
debating the merit of this position. I think the position is clearly, of merit. I guess my caution was just that we don't want to be in a position where we rely too heavily on this, and then we get to that point where now we have a decision to make 3 years from now when there's no more federal money, from the ESSER grants. But I think this particular person will do great, and I think it'll be a good service for our kids.
Thank you. So moving on to Dr. Moriello's committee agenda. Sorry, I'm having trouble picking up my paper. We have, as Ms. Prisco mentioned, we have a presentation tomorrow night, the 20, right, it's tomorrow night. I'm sorry, I wrote it down and now I can't figure out where I wrote it down. I apologize. Bear with me. Here it is. It's the 24th at 7 PM. We have Dr. Smars. 26th. Oh, I'm sorry. In the agenda, it says the 24th. That was yesterday. 26th is tomorrow. It is here. It is at 7 PM. We make that very clear. It is tomorrow in this auditorium at 7 PM. We will also be live streaming. And it's just the next step in our mental health series. I've been to the last two, incredibly valuable. I was able to go home and immediately implement what I've learned. And it really has made a significant difference with not only my children at home, but my students at school. I can't say enough that it is well worth the hour of your time. Well worth it. We have some paraprofessional approvals and our open house information was shared with the public and tours are being set up for the preschool lottery. It will take place on February 7th. And that is really it. I don't think, did I miss anything, Mr. Waka, off of that agenda?
I think you covered everything.
Over correctly, third time's a charm. Oh, I guess just one more thing, just to mention
Will
again.
it ever end?
I don't know how I got stuck sitting next to him. The Civic Center for the Wellness Fair is May 14th, rain date May 15th, just to keep putting that out there so everybody knows. Okay, thank you. I'm finally done.
Thank you, Mrs. Drappi. Does anybody have any questions in regard to the education report? No. So let's move on. Finance also met, and that was with Mr. Waka and Mr. Day.
Yes, after that wonderful presentation, I will continue on with the Finance Committee. So yesterday, Mr. Waka, Mr. Cruz, and I met with the Finance Committee to talk about a few items. One item is for all those folks that were on the Finance Committee previously, when we had those large bags with all those invoices, you had to lug around and sign them and bring them home every weekend. And we're going away, we're going green. So we're getting rid of all those invoices. We're creating a report packet. It's basically
wow.
just a large report that has all the itemized details about those particular invoices. And rather than signing all 100 or 150 invoices, we just have to sign it once. But we will go through it, be very detailed. We'll have those available as needed. But again, it's just a way to move forward and you take advantage of that new billing system that we have, an accounting system. So again, regarding the Genesis School Fi implementation, so again, that's a new accounting system. We're doing ongoing training and support. We completed our first payroll on the 14th of, so January 14th of this year. The first billing list was out on 125. So far, so good. Mr. Cruz seems very happy. He better be because he asked for this new accounting system. So, but again, it's working well. So far, so good. As we discussed previously, we have a budget 101 presentation that will be next meeting. So that'll be going over the process of budget development for the board and the public. We did our annual financial review today with our auditors. So thank you very much for that. And the last item was regarding, we have two clubs, the Italian club and the design club seem to be very popular clubs. So we're discussing about having a sidebar agreement to potentially add some stipends to those particular clubs for that teacher that's running those clubs. So again, it's still in discussion, but I just want to flag it out there. There's two clubs that are very popular that we're looking to, review a potential stipend.
Those
And
clubs
Mr.
at
Walker,
the,
anything else to add?
oh,
Yeah.
Mr. Day, were those clubs at the high school?
That's correct.
High school. Italian and
Italian and
design?
Design Club.
Yeah, so to add on, it was my first finance meeting and I signed off on $108 million worth of expenditures. So that was cool. We spent 108 million this cycle, but considering our budget's around 40 million, that's to be expected. 1.2 million of it came from payroll, which is also to be expected. I think that, to the second point Mr. Day brought up, this Genesis information system is going to be a home run. I don't think people realize just how important that is yet. It's almost like a one-stop shopping for HR and for the business side of employee, matters. It's a great way, many school districts use it. You can get your tax information, the amount of days you've taken sick, the amount of vacation days you've had. And we even talked to, there might be other pieces of information that we put and make available to our employees. So it's been a home run where I am. And I think the Verona employees, both administratively and the staffing are going to be happy that they have that. I'd asked about, our auditor just kind of explained this as well, but I'd asked about, hey, out of this $1.6 million surplus we have, how much of it do we expect because of the ESSER monies? And, Mr. Cruz said about 30% of it. So it seems like we're still doing a good job saving money. And again, we know when schools closed or closed for a certain amount of time, things are obviously cheaper, but it's a good problem for us to have. At least there's that silver lining. And then I followed up about a question that I'd asked at the last board meeting about the idea of us making sure we get some kind of stipend, hopefully a retroactive one, to the health office workers and nurses that have worked really outside of their traditional hours. So I was happy to hear, from Dr. Fernari that it looks like that's being advanced. And I'm very, very, very hopeful that at the next board meeting or somewhere very soon afterwards that we're able to kind of close the deal on that, because they're the ones taking care of our kids. So I'll make sure that we do our best to take care of them.
Anybody have any questions in regard to the finance report? Nope. Then thank you, gentlemen. And we're going to move down with our regular agenda. And at this point, we're going to open up to public comments that are on our agenda action items. So if you have a comment on anything that is in the resolution packet, now would be the time to approach the podium for that. And there is not. So we are going to move down into discussion items. And what I do want to point out is one of the resignations on our resolutions tonight is Mr. Joe Higgins, our Director of Facilities. So I did want to thank him for all his support and everything he's done for the district. He really went above and beyond for us. And I want to wish him well as he moves on and furthers his career. Are there any other discussion items?
Yeah, so there is something Sarah forgot. We both forgot. So in number 7, I appreciate that the policies are being updated, at least the ones we spoke of last week. But Sarah had emailed our school board's rep and asked to request that we do some kind of audit, like the school board's offers a service where they'll go through your policy book to see what's modern and what's not, needed or what needs to change. So there's a wait list because it takes a long time to read a policy and go through it like that, but it looks like we're going to be on the wait list. So that's good.
Prisco?
Mrs. Freshy, can I just add one quick, Mr. Day and I know Mr. Day was there because I saw him from across the gymnasium floor at Caldwell University back on January 15th. I just wanted to report out on Verona boys basketball played Cedar Grove at James Caldwell High School. It was for the Jandoli tip-off basketball game. And it was the Team Hill Foundation organized in honor of James Jandoli, whose 2 children attend the Verona schools. Verona won that game 55-33 against Cedar Grove. And they also presented Alex Rodriguez as MVP. He had 21 points that game. So he received the MVP award. And they also gave out the Jandoli scholarship, and that was given out to Jesse Loudon. So it was really a well-attended event, and our students attended, and it was really great. Mr. Day, it was a great event. It was well done, and the support from the staff, the student staff and families was great. So just wanted to bring that out. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Prisco.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Mikulowski, Mr. Halpern, and Ms. Hamilton from the middle school for their first in-person concert in 2 years. It was unbelievable what these kids can accomplish with masks on. it's really incredible to see them play together. They sounded amazing. The audience, it was very, very well attended and spaced, and everybody was masked, and it felt very safe. And the students just performed so incredible. So thank you to them for all their hard work.
And thank you, Doc, for, I guess, changing your mind and allowing parents to attend that conference. You know, I think that was really, really nice of you to do that. And it was meaningful to the parents.
So just a little background story on that. We actually, Mr. Galpercheck and Mr. Lancaster actually came to the high school with measuring tape in hand and made sure that we had the capacity to have family members, 2 family members per student performing in this room. And that was how the decision was actually made, that we could accommodate the concert. And I want to thank them for going above and beyond, because that was, it was a lot of, between the cautionary things that we were trying to implement and understanding. I am a former music teacher. I know how important performances are to children and their development as young musicians. And just for their own self-worth, with all of the hard work that they put in, and the teachers did a tremendous job, and as did their administrators.
To them as well.
Thank you. And if there are no other discussion items, we're going to move on for a roll call on the resolutions. I need a motion to accept resolutions number 1 through 17. Moved by Mrs. Prisco. Second by Mrs. Day. And is there any discussion on any of them?
I would just like to add about resolution number 17, the grant, the $2,500 grant that was awarded from Investors Foundation to the high school to support the Model United Nations Georgetown University Conference. I'm happy to see that, and I'm also happy to see that those students are able to attend that event.
I have a question regarding number 11 for co-curricular for this club. I know Dr. Miller isn't available tonight to speak on this, but I'm assuming it's volunteer because the club, like, they just kind of want to see if they can generate enough interest in the club before we move forward with the stipend. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. but
That's typically what we would do.
Yeah,
A
Okay.
lot of times it's
Historically, I
a
think-
new club that
New
you do
club.
want to validate for a year, that there's going to be the attendance and the number of
Okay.
individuals that will be, to make it a worthwhile club. So
Great. Thank you.
There's no other discussion. Mr. Jorge, can you please call the roll for the resolutions?
Sure, thank you. Mr. Walker,
Abstain on number 4, abstain on number 13, abstain on number 14, abstain on number 15, because I wasn't a board member then, and yes to everything else.
okay, thank you. Mr. Day,
yes,
Mrs. Drappi,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes,
Mrs. Freshy.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We have quorum. Thank you.
Excellent.
Motion passed.
Thank you very much. And we do have addendum resolutions. I need a motion to accept addenda resolutions number 1 through 3. Moved by Mrs. Drappi,
second,
second by Mr. Day. And is there any discussion on those?
I saw a number 2 VFI grant for Mr. Callie. So I want to thank VFI once again for doing an amazing job of allowing us to, the privilege of getting grants from them. And this particular grant is for $3,000.
And if there's no further discussion, Mr. Cruz, can you please do a roll call on those items?
Yes, Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes,
Mrs. Drappi,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
yes,
Mrs. Fresky.
Yes.
We have quorum, motion passed.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. And at this point, we will open up the podium to public comments. If anyone has a comment that they would like to make, you could please approach the podium, and you would need to state your name and address, and we would have 3 minutes per speaker.
Hello, Jackie Fricky, 65 Grove Avenue. I have 2 third graders and a second grader at FM Brown. I'm hoping to understand the plans for some of the various scenarios that will impact their day-to-day experiences for the rest of the year. Some of the specific and measurable scenarios I'd like to understand are what specific criteria constitutes canceling snack, what specific criteria constitutes switching to a half-day schedule. I know there's an emergency virtual instruction plan on the website. It's quite detailed, talks about the logistics. What's missing for me is what criteria constitutes that switch. My daughter's in the middle of a quarantine right now because she's a close contact of a positive case, and the reasoning is indoor lunch, where they're 3 feet apart and using plexiglass. And if those measures don't prevent a quarantine, I'm wondering what criteria allows us to do away with the plexiglass. What criteria allows the kids to move into a cafeteria setting? The kids are keeping their backpacks and their lunches on the hallway floors. What criteria allows them to use their coat closets? How many new lunch aides do we need to hire to ensure the teachers don't need to cover lunch duty? How many substitutes need to be hired to have a large enough bank that teachers aren't subbing for classes during their prep periods? I can tell you when my kids were able to have library in the library and take out books from the library, all 3 of them were so excited leaving school that day. I'm encouraged that vocal music will be in the music classroom now, choral music in the auditorium. So what criteria allows the kids to move into a room dedicated for art? I don't believe there's documented criteria in place for these milestones right now, although I would love to be proven wrong. I don't have faith that we have those plans. And as a parent, as a voter, that's very scary, very disturbing to me. I think it's beyond overdue. These aren't unprecedented times anymore. They're the present, they're the past, they're the foreseeable future. The trend seems to be that we're beginning to treat this as a regular part of our lives, as we should. Less quarantining for close contacts, no need for a negative test for close contacts. I'd like to see similar progress in their day-to-day lives. I don't want to believe that the plan is for them to end the school year under these circumstances, but I don't have any documentation or plan to have faith in that. So I know I threw a lot of questions there and a lot of examples, but it's really all underscored by one main question, which is when will we see a documented plan of specific and measurable milestones? Thank you.
Thank you. I would want to ask, if you have everything written down, can we have that? And I could give it to Dr. Fernari and she could kind of look through that and then come up with a more comprehensive answer for you?
That'd be great. I can email it to you. That's better.
I'm sorry?
I could email it to you.
Yep, that would be great.
Okay.
That would be perfect. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Megan Gutnick. I'm at 37 Valley View Road, and I have a second grader and a third kindergarten at FM Brown. And just to echo what Jackie Fricky was saying, I'm here tonight to say that even though we've made progress with the children attending school full-time, we still have a long way to go. I would like to discuss lunch solutions, and if time permits, bringing children back into the classroom for all specials, including art in the elementary level. We have lived with COVID now for 2 years, and it's time to come up with solutions for students not only to be able to attend school full day, but also with the end goal of children being able to eat in the cafeteria. And also come up with a solution for snack. I am tired of having weather dictate snack time. AKA, if it's warmer than 34 degrees, the children can eat on the blacktop outside. Things have changed in the world over the last 22 months. And it's time to evolve policy. We are no longer in 2020 or 2021. We are in 2022. So I've come up with some solutions based on what other neighboring districts have adopted and have helped put the children back in the cafeteria while attending a full day of school. We could initially schedule some of the children to have schedules to eat in the cafeteria using the stage area for extra seating with folding tables to maintain social distancing, utilizing the auditorium to supplement current space with additional tables and chairs. And the children who can't eat in these spaces will eat in the classroom. Now for snack, this could also be a solution for lunch. I will donate heaters or fundraise outdoor heaters, tables, tents, and chairs for the children to stack. So weather permitting, you'll be able to provide additional safe space where the children can sit outside and be warm. Students, teachers, parents, I know you guys all, we just want to get to some sort of normalcy. We're longing for it. And I really believe that COVID lunch solutions that keep our children in school full day while eating in the cafeteria is the answer. Now, Omicron is eventually going to die down. It already is, but what will happen when the next variant hits? So my ask is that you hear what I'm saying from you and we work together. I've went out to the community and said that we need substitutes and we need aides. And it sounds like from what you were sharing, we have a plethora of actual candidates. So please let's coordinate and work together between the school parents to create equitable solutions with the end goal of children eating in the cafeteria in this year, 2022.
Thank
Thank
you.
Very much.
Hi, how are you? Gina Signorelli, 27 Valley, no, that was my old address. 26 Valley View Road, sorry, I apologize. Long night. I again reiterate, what the last two ladies have said, I urge you to be more progressive in changes in the school setting. Again, art is huge, especially from an emotional standpoint with our children. And, having my daughter come home and saying, well, we couldn't do these projects because we didn't have the equipment, we didn't have the supplies, I think is very unacceptable. Figure out a way to get into the art room. 3 other questions. Is there a reason you aren't using a test to stay option? When will you change the travel guidelines? And what will happen with lunch after spring break if we are in the same high risk category? Are we going back to half days or are we going to figure out how to do full day? Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
If I could just chime in, I guess, to the 3 people that spoke. First of all, it's sometimes it can be intimidating speaking at board meetings, so thank you for coming to do that. And thank you for acknowledging that you have seen things get better, because I've seen things get better as well. So I appreciate that. And I think there's something to be said that the idea if we want to keep seeing progress, I don't think anyone would really want to just end or make this the new norm from moving forward. But thank you for bringing these points up.
Hello.
Hi, Laura Delegato, 31 Grove Avenue. I wanted to just quickly start by just acknowledging all our teachers, our staff, the people that are in the buildings every day doing the work. And specifically, I just wanted to acknowledge Miss Pesci, FN Brown, 2nd grade. She's been nothing but phenomenal this year for my daughter. I know one thing that you've all repeatedly have heard is how difficult it is for us parents to get here to these meetings. I know you all take time out of your schedule every couple of weeks to be here, and in addition to the other meetings that you attend. I'm certainly no exception to that, and was in fact late today because I had to do the handoff with my husband who was still on a work call. So my first question, to just put it back out there, is why are we not offering the virtual option to have people be able to call in to these meetings? It's so vitally important. We have seen what the advocacy of our parents can do. That's a lot of how we've made so much progress. But it's really difficult to get to these meetings. And so I think if we had that virtual option or a hybrid option, a lot more progress could be made. It's very confusing to me why we don't have that option when certain decisions are made in terms of like the half days and the removal of snack a couple days. And those decisions, my understanding, are made in being able to mitigate the spread, but then we still have to be here. So I don't understand why the rule applies to one scenario and not the other. My other question concern, again, just like the ladies before me said, my daughter's in second grade, so I specifically am thinking about elementary school. When the school year started, we knew that they'd be sitting outside on the ground for snack, for lunch. Didn't really think that that would be where we're still at this point. Like someone else said, why are we not tapping into the resources that we have? We have parents I know that would donate, fundraise, get picnic tables, heat lamps, tents for these kids across all the elementary schools. I think we could make it happen. I think there's also additional space that is not being utilized. We could be rotating the kids, so at least they had a place to sit every couple of days for lunch and snack, as opposed to not having a place to sit, but on the ground every single day. It's just very frustrating when these options are being put out there, these ideas are being put out there, but we're not getting any of those long-term plans, those creative solutions being communicated to us. I don't know if that's happening behind closed doors for you guys, but the communication is really lacking. And so it feels very much like we're just repeating ourselves over and over and over. And I'd really like to hear some more creative solutions and long-term planning. My most recent email about the SNAP, the response I got was just that you're just adjusting to what's coming up with the virus. That's just not acceptable anymore. This is our third school year of dealing with this. There needs to be plans in place. And then you adjust, obviously, when there's those little
Excuse me.
things that come up.
The 3 minutes is up, so your point is taken and everybody is listening. Thank you.
And just so you know how the board, how we're obligated to operate, we don't get to determine the day-to-day operations. We can only look at things that are on an agenda and vote yes or vote no or have discussion. But none of us have the ability to kind of dictate anything behind closed doors about what those operations are going to be. But to your point about Zoom, I'm hopeful that my fellow board members will reconsider their position in short time, and we can offer that level of transparency and inclusion to our community.
How you doing? My name's Derek Chupak from 7 Durrell Street. As far as what's going on with school with the masks, my daughter she breaks out in hives because of the heat in the classrooms. Just like peanut allergies, kids have certain allergies to certain things. What types of steps are being taken to take care of the children in that matter? Kids being reprimanded for putting their mask down. Again, my daughter gets hot. She has a minor case of asthma. What are the teachers doing to alleviate the stresses that the kids are having from those types of ailments? The other thing is my daughter has come home and said, she's in 8th grade, so naturally she has her lady things that happen every month. From what they're telling me, from what she's telling me, is teachers are giving her a hard time to go to the bathroom. And I don't even know how to address that properly. I mean, how do you refuse a kid, or maybe not refuse, but given a hard time to a kid that needs to go to the bathroom and take care of her situation? Now, the other thing is, as far as the DEI, are we presuming that the children have white privilege? Is that what we're telling our kids in the classrooms? Because from what I understand is English class has been renamed to something else. So I don't even see how it fits. An English class where you learn how to do commas and sentences and things of that nature is now being changed to teach them, something that they don't even understand. So how do you change a class to that? I can tell you right now, you guys may not know Marcos, maybe you do. Maybe you know Lauren, maybe you don't. They grew up in Newark. We struggled to get them here. So I'm trying to figure out how my 3 minutes is up. All right, no problem.
Thank you very much.
George Kozacek, 100 Morningside Road. I have a couple of questions, but they all go back to previous resolutions. One would be to the board back in August. You had resolution that you voted on to limit our comments to 5 minutes. Now it's 3 minutes. I'd like someone to tell me when it was changed from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. If you can send me that information. Also, on the hiring of HYA, I'd like to know how many firms were interviewed and how many applications were filled out to other companies to find our new superintendent. I'd like to know how many of them were minority companies. Could you please provide backups of the companies that you contacted? I also like to know how did you come up with the cost of $19,500 for their fee for this? Also, let's see, back when the contract was negotiated for our previous superintendent, Mrs. Prisco had made a comment on how she thought that was very large from his previous contract to the new one. It was a large increase. So I'd like to know why you gave him that large increase. What did he do? Could you tell me what he did besides the referendum, which he didn't do, besides anything to do with mental health or suicide? All that stuff has to do with his job, which he would do normally all the time. So if you can tell me what he did above and beyond to collect an extra $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, because everybody thinks he did so much. Also, let's see. Back in May 11th, resolution number 12 and 13, you, as the DEI committee people that we know, you hired 2 white cis males. One would be David Freshy, one is John Quattricki at $15,000 each. Does not say who they represent, it just says John Quattricki for pro bono. I'd like to know what companies they represent. How do you use them? Did you pick out any other individuals? Did you have any other minority companies that you were referred to? And that's it. Thank you. I expect to have the answers. Last time, I'd like to thank Mr. Merkler, Mr. Cogsdill, and Mr. Cruz for answering my questions, but the board did not answer my questions that I asked. Please answer them this time.
Mr. Kozak, do you want to leave us with your notes so we don't miss any questions? Okay, so likewise, a lot of the questions that you asked were at our previous meeting, so. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Doc, I got a quick question for the other gentleman that spoke. So I was an English teacher for 15 years, English language arts. We still call it English language arts, right? Okay, I was trying to think what else it could be possibly called. All right.
Can you please come to the podium and say that?
It's called Race, Culture, and Identity, something like that. And it's a mandatory class for seniors, and it's English language arts
At the high school?
at the high school.
We're not employees of the district, to be totally fair. We oversee the agendas, but none of us work for the particular district. But I know each high school student currently must take 4 years of English, but I'm interested to learn more about, that particular thing.
I just have some, Maria School on T6 Belclair Place. I just have some general, wasn't gonna say anything, but I have some general suggestions. I concur with a lot of what was said here today. But as for the way we run these meetings, I wonder if it would make sense to either provide a transcript, I'm trying to think of low-cost solutions, and or answer the questions that were asked here, because some of the questions the ladies asked on this side of the room, I'd like to know the answer to, and some of the questions asked on this side of the room, other people would like to get an answer to. So it would be interesting if you guys would think about maybe answering the questions and providing a document or something as an addendum to the agenda after, so that we actually do, since we don't have that civilized discourse, I think are the words that we used last time, to have a discussion here, because sometimes we make comments and ask questions and they're not answered here. They're answered later on a one-to-one basis. It would be more efficient if maybe we answered them so that everybody could have the answers to those. And then another humble suggestion I would make would be to rethink the time limit. I know Cedar Grove did. I understand why it's done. I mean, obviously, a lot of people like to talk a lot. But I would just think about maybe lengthening that, since 3 minutes is a very short period of time. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
Good evening. Nancy Siebert, 40 Birdseye Glen. I have 2 boys in 7th and 10th grades. I wanted to circle back to the concert comments that were made earlier. I've been a music and theater parent for 6 years, so I'm well acquainted with all the ins and outs and wonderful aspects of all parts of the music and theater program in town. I wanted to share some comments regarding the policies surrounding a live audience for the HBW concert last week. It was wonderful to have a live audience, but I have to say that it was surprising, confusing, and upsetting that an audience was initially allowed and then not allowed and then allowed again. The children and their teachers worked for months preparing a wonderful concert. They deserve to hear our applause and see our faces in the audience. The reason that many of you received calls and emails from parents in the community, many of whom did not even have a student in the band or chorus, is because most parents could see this decision did not make scientific sense and was inconsistent with other decisions regarding spectators for other types of events in the district. When I shared the good news with my 7th grader that the decision had been overturned and an audience would in fact be present, he replied, quote, "That's great, because after 5 months of learning all this new music and practicing and rehearsing, it would have been really depressing to play to an empty auditorium, especially this really big one at VHS. I told him I couldn't agree more. I'm here today because it was so wonderful to watch my son perform after 2 years without concerts, and I wanted to share with you the nervous excitement buzzing through our home all week, the happiness and pride he felt after the concert, and especially the highlight of the entire experience for him, which was the camaraderie and support he received and gave to his bandmates. I'm speaking today in continued support of the performing arts students in our district with an eye on the upcoming musicals and concerts, some of which are scheduled as early as next month. Hopefully, we're moving past the worst of the pandemic and any further restrictions will be unnecessary. However, I sincerely hope that you will not rob the students, teachers, or parents of any aspect of their hard-earned and well-deserved experiences in the future. I'm asking for parity. The performing arts students deserve an audience the same as the student athletes who get to have spectators at every game as of course they should. In fact, as I left the concert in this very building last week, I was able to also visit a wrestling match with spectators in one gym and a basketball game with spectators in another. I also saw pictures of crowded bleachers during several basketball games over the weekend, one of which was mentioned earlier, the fundraiser, evidence that these types of events can and should be safely attended in our schools. To my knowledge, there was no measuring tape or distancing at the sporting events, nor any preclusions to 2-parent limits or any limits on the spectators. Again, parity between the performing arts and sports. I'll finish in a second. I want to point out that the music program in Verona is a staple of our school district and our community. The 4th grade band and chorus, the summer music program, the middle school band and chorus, and the VHS music program all feed into each other and into the theatrical performances throughout the school year, as well as in the summer. 1 second, almost done. Canceling or limiting performances or audiences will decrease student motivation and participation. And now in our third academic year of living with COVID, your decisions are likely beginning to have long-lasting impact on one of the strongest parts of our school district. I respectfully ask you to consider these factors when making decisions about the performing arts in our district in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that is a point worthy of consideration if we're not putting these same levels of stringency upon the parents of athletes, and especially with the music and the arts kids, when there's less opportunities for performances. I think there's something to be said about the point you made. Thank you.
I don't see anybody else for a public comment before we close. Is there anybody else who wants to approach the podium? No, I do want to thank everybody who spoke and for your comments. And at this point in the meeting, we are going to adjourn. There's no executive private session that we need to fall back into tonight. So with that, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Day. Second by Mrs. Prisco. All in favor?
Aye.
And the meeting is adjourned at 8:43 PM. And our next meeting will be held on Tuesday, February 8th. Confidential session at 6 PM with the public session